Today is a day like no other. I finally went blind. This has been a short-term goal of mine for the better part of a week now. However, I do plan to put my abilities to good use. So I've selected a few random games for me to play. I don't know what they are yet, but I can't wait to see what beautiful masterpieces I'll be getting my hands on. Let's be real for a moment. We like games. They give us some of the greatest experiences we could ever ask for. Some change us in meaningful ways that affect us as people as a result. They can be incredible works of art with tons of hidden secrets that make the game endlessly replayable, but they can also be Smurfs 2 for the Wii U. See, not all games are created equal. Thanks to the Nintendo Switch, I can go from playing Super Mario Odyssey to Kirby Star Allies on a dime. There are some pretty bad games out there, but there are also ones that nobody ever talks about. I mean, Red Alarm wasn't that bad, so I've decided to put myself out there and get into some random games. They could be good, they're probably bad. But I'm not going to cover any games that I would talk about in a later date, which means I'm safe for now. Tony Hawk Shred. Someone had to do it. This is a skateboarding simulator for the Wii. So what, do I use the Wii balance board to shift my weight all around? No. You use the skateboard controller it comes with. I got this as a Christmas gift a while back, and I didn't really get into it that much, and coming back to it years later, I can see why. Or can I? The skateboard controller works, but it's nothing but a total gimmick that gets hollow after playing with it for 15 minutes. I will say that this kind of simulator isn't for me. I enjoy wasting my time in better ways. In this game, you ride around on your skateboard by tilting the controller all about. And surprisingly, the controls work great. I'm just not that good at it. And because the entire game is just going around performing tricks and making use of the meter on the bottom right, it gets old fast. I had a decent amount of fun with it. It has some quick lessons that help me pick the game back up in no time. So my real problem with the game is that I only see it as a novelty and a bulletproof vest. ESPN Sports Connection. This game, by definition, is bad. If you couldn't tell, this is a ripoff of Wii Sports, but for the Wii U. I'm going to preach it for the third time this week, but Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort were perfectly simple games that had charm and amount of content that's had me going for years, and the sports themselves were unique and fun to control. This game is an unpolished mess with 6 sports that barely have any different modes behind them, each of them having 2 options to go for, one being the typical sport, and the others caddy. And it doesn't help that all of them feel like an intern had a free weekend and made some simple tech demos of what games are supposed to look like, because this isn't karting. They made drunk driving illegal a long time ago, and stroke play is emblematic of what I'm doing right now. This game does nothing special or original, and when it does, I run away. The controls are awful. The avatars always look like they're planning something, and I've lost all interest in this specific combination of letters. Clueland is an NES game that I constantly point and laugh at, because what kind of person would name their game this? And once you get into the game itself, yeah, the title makes sense. This is a very weird black box NES game. Everyone seems to forget that it exists, but it's one of the first things that I think of when someone mentions the NES. The goal of the game is to go around the stage and covering as many of these lines as possible. It isn't all that enthralling. The controls are delayed and clunky, and to top it all off, I'm wearing a polo. But I think that this game is a perfect encapsulation of this era of games. It isn't great, but it isn't bad at what it does. It's simple in both how it presents itself and how it plays. It has its imperfections, but I can stand playing it, and it's a funny coincidence because that's how I feel about 50% of NES games. Sure, the console had its Marios and Zeldas, but this game feels like an NES game from top to bottom, and personally, I wouldn't have it any other way. Hasbro Family Game Night. I might as well take out 2 of these words. This game is a mini-game collection featuring 6 games produced by Hasbro, and I love most of these games. I'd rather stay at home playing Virtual Connect 4 than go out and interact with society. Yahtzee's always been fun to me, and the only one that doesn't really fit with the rest is Sorry Sliders. The motion controls for this game in particular are just bad. I always feel like I either fling too hard or I don't fling enough. I don't think the amount of games in this collection is astonishing. There could have been a few lesser known titles added, but they're good Hasbro games that I can now play on my Wii with the option of pointer functionality. But the main draw of this game is something that I can't have. The game is obviously more fun when you're playing with people, but don't take me as your source. I'd be caught dead before someone finds me playing a virtual game of Sorry with someone else. But I still have my fun with the game. I mean, you can't really mess up Battleship unless you're that guy. Bomberman 64 is the best game I'll play today. It's no masterpiece and I just started playing it, but it's the only game here that I didn't want to stop playing, and that's because I think the Bomberman gameplay is neat. You place bombs, kidnap someone, spout coordinates, it's great. I used to play quite a bit of Super Bomberman R back in the day, because I won't act like it wasn't one of the first titles I got for the system. I chose this over Breath of the Wild. Think about that. Now Super Bomberman R was alright, but this is great. It's a fun mix of having a very linear goal to go for, while also adding a bit of an exploration element with the option to collect the gold cards for something. I don't know, I didn't get that far. My one gripe with this game is that the controls can sometimes be a bit finicky, but what did I expect? A compliment? This is a Nintendo 64 game. And with this controller, I just think they were doing the best they could. I expected the bare minimum, coming hot off the heels of Clueland, but I'll be. This is a good game, just like Spanky's Quest. I don't even want to see this one. This game is about a monkey who destroys evil walking fruits with bubbles that turn into a random assortment of sports balls. That wasn't what I was expecting, but I think I'm gonna stay blind for this one. It's a good game, I just think the concept is weird. The game is a simple puzzle platformer where you're trapped in an evil tower by a witch, and you must find the keys to make your way out. There's nothing bad about this game, which explains why it's good, but it never gets great, because while the gameplay is fun, it never changes anything up. The game gets more difficult as you go along, but I think I experienced everything this game had to offer in this first world alone. I could keep playing it if I wanted to, it didn't offend me and I like playing it, but I can say that to half of the games I own. I just have better things to do with my time. Guess what I'm doing right now? Tak and the Power of Juju is a 3D platformer released for the GameCube in 2003, and I think I liked it. From what I played, the platforming was very basic, but the whole vibe the game goes for is just weird. You have monkeys throwing junk at you, melons that you use to shoot targets down, a small cloud to bash enemies with. The game is just weird, but when you actually play it, it's a very generic 3D platformer. It's something that I enjoyed playing, but I do not want to go back to playing it. It's probably better and more well designed than most of the games I've talked about, but I think I at least gained something from ESPN Sports Connection. It was a tumor, but the point still stands. The only interesting thing about this game is that it got a mediocre TV show a few years later, which is the only thing that I remember it for. But I'll always remember Minute to Win It for the Wii because of Guy Fieri. This is a very cheaply made game show game. You know those games that try to be like one of those game shows you see on TV if you're desperate, and they try to bring the excitement of the real thing into a virtual game space? Yeah, this is one of those, and I can say that Minute to Win It doesn't work very well with crappy controls. To be fair, I've never seen the show itself, and I barely know how to spell Fieri, but this game tries to tie complex motions into a controller that can't register them, and even then, flailing the remote around seems to work just fine. It asks you to do some very strange things. Like, I understand why I'm doing this, I have to get that cash prize, but the tasks you have to do are either so simple that they're boring, or they are so insane that I feel like I'm embarrassing myself even when I'm the only person within a 2-mile radius. I knew the truth was gonna have to come out someday, but this game isn't good. Cell Damage is wacky. I've had this game sitting on my shelf ever since I got the GameCube, and I never even thought of playing it because I was too busy picking my nose. But this game was an unexpected surprise. If its identification didn't tip you off, the game goes for a cel-shaded art style, and it looks really nice. The whole game goes out of its way to try and feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. It falls under the demolition derby genre, as that's what you'll be having fun with for a majority of the time you're playing this. There are other modes, but nothing as fun as pulling out a huge gun from your hood and shooting down the competition. The game is really fun to look at and to mess around with. And while there isn't really a compelling draw that keeps me coming back to it, I might bust it out at a party as everyone proceeds to ask why the right trigger is the gas. I mean, ESPN Sports Connection could get away with it, but this is where I draw the line. Bakugan Defenders of the Core. It's a Bakugan game. I used to watch the show all the time, around a decade ago, but I still remember a few things about it, like that guy is Dan, this person is evil, and this game is just okay. It just feels like a button masher fighting game with not that much substance. And that's because that's exactly what this is. But this game is still decent because I do enjoy pressing the B button on the Wii remote. And from what I played of it, I realized two things. The game does the act of button mashing really well, and I accidentally gave my avatar a big nose. It might just be the same thing over and over again with not much changing, but it does that just fine, and it isn't awful. It was a fun game for 30 minutes, but I've decided to move on to bigger and better things. What do you mean I should get a job? Picross S6. It has Picross, and a lot of it. I'd consider it a disappointment if it didn't do that. I really like my fair share of Picross, and I still stand by the fact that Super Mario Picross on the Super Famicom is my favorite Picross game. But this game just has really nice aesthetics, to the point where I could leave the title screen on for hours and I'd see it as comfort. Now if you played any of the other Picross S games, this one's no different. I haven't encountered anyone who strictly abides by Picross S5, but a new Picross game is still a big deal. I'm still trying to predict when Picross S8 will strike. I like 6 a whole lot. It's a large time waster, and there's no hiding that. I've already tried. But that isn't a bad thing. I'd take the simple and addictive gameplay of Picross over The Last of Us any day. Picross is one of the few games I would never pass up the chance to play. And all S6 had to do was not screw it up. It might seem impossible, but I tried making my own Picross game, and I realized that I was just playing tic-tac-toe by myself. At least I won. Wipeout 3 was a staple of my childhood. Whenever my friends and neighbors from across the street would come over to play some games, we didn't dive into Mario Kart, or even dip our toes in a Mario Party. But this game was different. This game kept me going for the early stages of my life. I played this game for hours on end, trying to do everything that I could possibly do in it. And playing it now, it's made me realize something. The game is just alright. Now, it may just be the past stopping me from calling this complete garbage, but this is exactly what you'd find in a random assortment of games that means nothing to absolutely no one. This is one of those games that people just give you on eBay free of charge because it has no value to anything but a landfill. But to me, the cheesy lines, stupid physics, basic animations, it all makes this game better than it actually is. The game is okay. I don't think I'd show it to someone and they'd slap it out of my hand. But if I ask them if they want to play it, they're just gonna tell me to redirect them to the GameCube game so we can all play Mario Party 6. And so I must accept my fate of never finding someone to play Wipeout 3 with. Everyone that's played it with me either went away or I haven't talked to them in years. This game reminds me of what childhood is and stands for. It might not be that good, but under the right circumstances, it can be enjoyable. And now is a random look at some random games, in case you forgot what I was talking about. Some of them were good, and Bomberman 64 was great. However, I don't think most of them have a reason for me to go back to them, or me to think of them as worthwhile experiences. But I will say that it's better than running from the law.